One of our favorite secret weapons for problem solving and negotiating is local real estate attorney Brian Lytle. In this series of Get Smart, Brian shares insights on repair escrows.
In today's Get Smart segment, we're going to take a look at repair escrows. Before we do that specifically, just to remind you, this is not specific legal advice. It's always fact dependent. Rather, this is just a broad overview. And of course, the three contracts within the Lismore and Associates geographic area use three different contracts. The RAIN contract is used on the Virginia Peninsula, the CVR contract is used in Richmond, and the VR contract is used in Williamsburg. And of course, on each of those, the surrounding geographic area. And there's no law that says it has to be that way. That's by custom and tradition, and of course you might see one contract in a different area. Those contracts handle some things a bit differently, some things quite a bit differently, but on this case, all are fairly drafted for both buyers and sellers. So in that way, your Lismore and Associates agent uses the same contract whether he or she is representing a buyer or representing you as a seller. So again, the purpose of this Get Smart segment is to drill down on repair escrows and to take a look at those. If you have any questions or need direction, you should ask your Lismore agent for guidance. So, what is a repair escrow? Well, it's not unusual in the contract, whether it is a result of a home inspection or a different provision like termite and moisture damage. The seller has obligated, has obligated themselves to perform certain repairs. And we're in a situation where the repairs have not been completed by the date of closing, but the parties want to close and escrow some money to pay for them. So that's the broad background. Let me say that this is generally a bad idea. And there are a couple of reasons for that. First of all, if you think about it, whether there's an agreement and money held, if contractors are coming in after the buyer has closed, there's always the risk that there will be additional problems discovered. For example, if there's significant work being done in the crawl space, a contractor would have estimated it based on what the contractor saw, but once lumber's being removed and piers are being worked on, whatever the case is, there's always some risk that there's damage that was hidden at first that now comes to bear. And of course, there's insufficient money to take care of those things. So you're always better off, really both from a seller and a buyer standpoint, to actually have the work done, know that it's done, let the buyer inspect, review, and approve it so that those kinds of disputes don't come up. But it doesn't have to be after discovered hidden stuff. Buyer might find himself or herself in a situation where the work was just done very poorly. Well, what do you do then? Well, of course, you're going to proceed on the escrow agreement, but you're going to get into a fight that's a difficult situation. That contractor might want to file that you're firing or didn't do the work, isn't getting paid, is going to file a mechanics lien. And of course, that's while that at first blush seems to be just a problem for the buyer, the last thing a seller wants to do is to get sued and be dragged into that sort of problem as well. So there's an awful lot of risk in doing repair escrows. But sometimes, both parties, the buyer and the seller, really want to do this. Perhaps the work is relatively minor. There's no great risk in terms of hidden damage. And so under those circumstances, a repair escrow can be done with a couple of conditions. First of all, the buyer's lender has to approve this. You can't do this in secret. It needs to be on the closing disclosure, what we used to call a HUD-1, in other words, the financial statement of the transaction that the lender and the parties approve. And then there has to be a written agreement detailing the terms of the escrow. Settlement agents regulated by the Commonwealth of Virginia, a written agreement is required, and on top, whether it's required or not, it really needs to be done in writing so there are no disputes or issues about what's to be done, when it's supposed to be done, what happens to the money, who holds the money, and those kinds of situations. Look, it's not unusual that some settlement agents, some agents, they kind of want to do this and not tell the lender about it. Everybody just wants to get it done. But that's really not lawful to do it that way. There's the risk that it constitutes loan fraud if it's hidden from the lender, and settlement agents can't turn a blind eye to this. So if you're going to do it, let's do it correctly. And of course, there are always other solutions. One, of course, is to extend the closing until the work has been properly completed and inspected. You can get rate lock extensions if that's an issue. If the seller's the cause of the delay, then perhaps the buyer should and could ask the seller to pay the rate lock extension. You can talk to your agent, your Lismore agent, about the idea of early possession. But there again, that's a little problematical, and that's generally not a good idea either. So it is true that you can do repair escrows. It needs to be approved and disclosed and in writing, and make sure that everybody has open eyes and knows exactly what's going on. I would also note, although not on the outline, that generally the escrow amount is 2 to 3 times the amount of the, maybe as low as 1.5, but depending on the work, as high as 3 times, just to ensure that the work is going to get done and to try and cover some of the problems. So that's really the end of the segment. I would strongly encourage you under those circumstances to talk to your Lismore agent, and he or she can direct you from there and help you with that. Thanks, and have a great day.
Be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications for our next installment of Get Smart with Brian Lytle.